Hey, what's up? I wanted to make a video uh, for the hunter, but I also wanted to sort of focus on open world content and questing and more casual stuff. All my other videos have been, running dungeons, even if they're heroic or time walking, a couple Mythic Plus dungeons, because that's the content that I'm mostly interested in. But I tend to play a lot of the campaign on the Steam Deck, like lying in bed. Um, I sort of see it as getting it over with, but a lot of people really enjoy this content. And I was curious as like what's the best spec? What specs are really good for the Steam Deck doing more casual content? So the reason I wanted to do the Hunter is because I had sort of been putting the Hunter off because it has a couple mechanics that in a group content, higher level content, would be a little bit tricky on the Steam Deck. Specifically, how to do misdirection. If you want to misdirect the tank very often, you don't want to be hovering over your cursor and casting it directly on the tank. And so I looked into some macros. You could set the tank as your focus and use it that way, but then you lose focus kick macro, which is, in my opinion, that's very important. So you'd have to do some Steam Deck wizardry, which it's not that hard. I'm going to make a video on how to set up misdirect for a button that will always hit the tank and mouse over misdirect the tank. But for open world content, that's not really something you need to consider. You can make a macro to misdirect to your pet. And that's just going to be a button. Here I am checking the battery life. So the battery life is fantastic, even in a town with other people. And miraculously, Decky Recorder is actually working here, which it works maybe 25% of the time, but when it works, it's fantastic because I get to showcase what the graphics look like without it plugged into an external monitor, which that bumps the frame rate up to 60 for me. The capped frame rate when I play in handheld mode, I play it at 45. But anyway, I'm digressing a lot. The Hunter was the first spec I ever played in World of Warcraft. I asked what the easiest spec was in Legion for people who are beginners, and they said Beast Mastery Hunter, and I played this spec for almost the entire expansion, Legion expansion. Did my first raid with it. And it's largely the same, and I think that this is a really good spec for doing casual content, right? Just like it is on PC, but on the Steam Deck, because you don't have to worry so much about targeting, it's not so much the pet tanking for you, but because you don't really need to target because of how Beast Cleave works and the Death Chakram just kind of bounces to everything, it really lends itself to the Steam Deck. Here I am turning on auto loot because I don't play this spec at all. But yeah, using the mouse like a cursor and searching for things, it's not hard on the Steam Deck when you don't have a keyboard plugged in. I think I probably searched for it with the keyboard. Here, let's see what I do. Yeah. The on-screen keyboard is great. I mean, if you're not typing in a lot of stuff, it's great. I am going to make a video about a feature I found for speech to text, which I think would be very good for World of Warcraft, where you can sort of chat by just speaking into the Steam Deck. That's still in progress. I'm having a hard time with the installation, but it looks like that's going to be widely available pretty soon. So one of the things I was testing out here and in other parts of the video is how disengage works. So you're controlling your character a little bit differently than you do on mouse and keyboard. On mouse and keyboard, you're generally keeping your camera effectively behind your character, and when you press S like back, you're backpedaling with the mouse and keyboard, where with the joystick you kind of turn around a lot more. So you're not your character isn't necessarily facing where you're turning all the time because of the way that the joystick works. So disengage was a little bit unintuitive for me. Also, My disengage is on a trigger here, so I pull right trigger and then A, and that's disengage. Where my jump is just, vanilla, press one of the back buttons on the back of the Steam Deck. Holding the right trigger, like if I just wanted to hold right trigger, jump, disengage, that doesn't trigger the jump. So you have to not be holding the right trigger modifier when you press jump with the way that I have this set up. That was a little bit hard to get used to. And I think that if I was maining Hunter and I was playing it constantly, instead of getting used to that, I'd probably try to figure something else out. Change my keybinds a little bit to make it so that jump, disengage is like very, very natural feeling. But I don't, Hunter is not my main, so this was mostly just an experiment video for me. But yeah, I think, like laying in bed and chilling and playing the Hunter on the Steam Deck, doing quests or like, grinding, trying to get mounts. It's definitely one of the best specs for sure to do that. I mean, like if you were thinking about getting a Steam Deck and you're not really sure like how you're going to use it, maybe you don't travel a lot when you commute, or if you're driving, you have to pay attention when you're driving. You don't really see the handheld portion of the Steam Deck being useful for you. That's where I was. I just, kind of play this while I'm chilling in my bed. Like if it's the weekend and I don't feel like getting up early, I'll play on the Steam Deck for a little bit. Or if I'm just like sick of sitting at my desk because I was working all day and I don't want to sit on the same desk and play games, sometimes I'll like chill on the couch and play the Steam Deck because I don't watch TV or anything. So I've been using it a lot more than I thought I would, right? I'm like pretty cheap in general, and if I buy something, I want to make sure I use it, and I don't feel like I'm forcing myself to use this because I bought it. Like I really enjoy. There are some parts of the games that I play that I enjoy more on the Steam Deck than I do sitting at my computer and playing mouse and keyboard. Like I just got Diablo 4. And I was kind of getting sick of it. Like I was skipping through the cutscenes and the conversations. And then I installed it on my Steam Deck and I was playing and I was way more engaged in the game. Like I was reading the text, letting all the conversations go through. I was interested in the story because I didn't have other distractions around me. Like I don't have my browser open. People aren't texting me on my phone. I was just like sitting there playing this video game on the Steam Deck in my bed. Which, by the way, I have a video about Diablo 4 on the Steam Deck. If you were interested in buying it and you wanted to know if it worked on the Steam Deck ahead of time, it's very good on the Steam Deck. It's easier to play and set up and everything on the Steam Deck than WoW is, and the controller support is incredible. The game was built to take into account people playing on controllers, and so spells work differently on controllers than they do with mouse and keyboard, and some of them work better. Like with the Necromancer, consuming corpses on the Steam Deck with the controller is way easier. Like you don't have to target the corpses with your mouse. It's just going to start eating them and doing whatever power you're decided to put for consume corpse. But this is kind of annoying how that is not selecting accept. That happens occasionally with certain quests that have a particular amount of quest text. The D-pad, stops wanting to be your friend, and sometimes I have to hover over with the touchpad, which has always made me wonder, like if before the Steam Deck came out, if you didn't have a Steam controller, you just had a regular Xbox controller or something, how are those people using the cursor with console port? Like, there's got to be some kind of feature that turns your joystick into the cursor by pressing something. Which is actually might be a useful feature because there's a couple specs that I want to take over both touchpads for, which means that I'd be without a cursor until I figure out some solution, like maybe action layer switching or something. But I've talked about that in a bunch of my other videos. If you're interested in what sort of the advanced features I'm trying to attempt to do with WoW on the Steam Deck, they involve a lot of heavy configuration with the touchpads, turning them into special menus that automatically move your cursor to certain portions of the screen and then cast a spell. Because of the way those work on the Steam Deck, I sort of need to use both touchpads, unfortunately, instead of, having one touchpad. But yeah, this is the Beast Mastery Hunter is really great. I think maybe I'll try Marksmanship Hunter on one of these. I don't really play that. Maybe I'll see how it works. I want to try a DPS Shaman. Somebody was asking about that in the comments. So maybe I'll make that video. I've played Elemental, so I'll probably do that first, and then once I get some agility stuff, weapons and trinkets, I'll do enhancement. The other one I want to try is the Protection Warrior. I mained that for 1.5 expansions, and I think that it's probably going to be, as far as the console port configuration goes, the toughest tank to play on Steam Deck. By a lot, I think. I don't think any of the other tanks have a particular problem. I think they're pretty easy. But I think because of the way that Protection Warrior works, it might be a little bit more annoying. And if you're interested, if you play Protection Paladin because it's meta and you want to play that on the Steam Deck, you should check out my Protection Paladin video, because I'm doing the click casting configuration there that I talked about, where you can use the virtual menu touchpad to cast Word of Glories on your team members. By just pressing a button, it automatically selects the appropriate team member to cast Word of Glory on. Once I get some more time to mess around with Protection Paladin, I'm going to try to configure that to do with all the click casting spells. So you do Word of Glory, Lay on Hands, Sack, and Dispel. That's 4. I'm not going to do Bop. I usually don't even take Bop when I do serious content on the Paladin. So that's actually the perfect number of click casted spells for the configuration that I have. And you're probably thinking, well, what about res and battle res? What are you going to do about that? Well, I'm going to make a macro that if I click cast over a party member and they're alive, I'm going to cast Word of Glory on them. If they're dead and we're in combat, I will battle res them. And if they're dead and we're not in combat, I'll cast regular res. So that gives me 4 keybinds. And if you think about it, pressing on the trackpad, that's 1. Left trigger press, that's 2. Right trigger press, that's 3. Both trigger press, that's 4. So any spec that has 4 or fewer party member friendly casts that you can bind to a click cast or mouse over macro, it's fantastic on the Steam Deck, right? Because with the minimal amount of configuration, you can just take over one touchpad virtual menu to do that, and it's very good. So then if you have 8, obviously you could do 2 touchpads. Anything more than 8, I don't know how you're going to do that. You could maybe set up a 3rd modifier key, which gives you 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. So it gives you 12 more bindings on top of the 8 that you already have, right? Does that right? 4, 4, 4, yeah. So left trigger plus the new modifier, right trigger plus the new modifier, left and right trigger plus the new modifier, and just the new modifier. So that's 4 times... what? Am I wrong there? No, it's just 4 more. Yeah, so you'd get 12. So I think that's all specs, right? Like, I'm pretty sure Discipline Priest is the spec with the most targeted friendly abilities, I think, if I recall correctly. And they might have 11. I'm going to have to check that, but I think the maximum number of targeted abilities for any spec in the game for friendly targeted abilities is 11. But that's going to be very hard to, get the muscle memory down for that. For 11 different abilities with 3 different modifier keys. I really don't want to do that. So, I've talked about this a million times in my other videos, but the goal is to get tap and press on a touch menu set up so that if I press down, click on the virtual menu, it casts one ability. If I tap on it, it casts a different ability, right? So that doubles the number of spells per trackpad. That is the absolute dream. And that only works with the virtual D-pad. So if you turn the trackpad into a virtual D-pad, that works, and it is awesome. The D-pad only has 4 buttons though, and there are 5 party members, so you're cooked with the D-pad, and that's really unfortunate. The virtual menu, which you can configure to have 5, it doesn't work. I've tried everything, different timings, different ways, continuous press, release press, everything. It's bugged, and it unfortunately doesn't work, so that is really, really sucks. So you cut in half the number of spells you can configure to a single touchpad. Hopefully they'll fix that, right? They're really putting a lot of effort into the Steam Deck. They want it to be as usable as possible to sell more units, but the state of controller configuration right now is bad, right? Like, I am afraid to open the controller configuration while playing a game because of how consistently it crashes the entire Steam Deck. If you are messing around with controller configurations while in game to test things out, you will crash. It's not a matter of if you will, it's when you'll crash. It will crash the Steam Deck. Sometimes it's on the very first time I open the configuration menu. Sometimes it's after 30 minutes of tinkering with it, right? But if you open that thing, you're rolling the dice that the Steam Deck will crash because of SteamOS's overlay in the controller configuration. And that really sucks. It's a fundamental flaw on the Steam Deck. There's plenty of people on Reddit that will tell you they've never experienced it. And, that's great for them. But you can go search threads all the way to the beginning of the Steam Deck that show that it crashes. And there's even people from back in the day with Steam Big Picture mode that are saying exactly the same thing, right? I mean, they basically just reskinned the controller configuration from Steam Big Picture. And it's had problems for like 6 or 7 years, basically. So, some of the threads go back to 2017 with these problems. And there's other problems with the controller configuration that we don't need to get into, but it's a mess, right? And it's got so much promise, which is the unfortunate part. But anyway, at this point, I've really got out of the Hunter commentary. But this video is going to end, and let me know in the comments if you have any other suggestions for videos.